Hello Internet, today I'm going to show you guys how to sculpt tortured souls for your tabletop needs. Use these in crafting projects and terrain models that you're making. But too much intro, let's jump into it. So the first thing I do is I grab some clay. I'm using Supersculpy, but you can use any brand, especially if you can bake them. If not, use some epoxy sculpt. It's also great for these projects. First thing I do is take some clay and I smear it on a non-sticky surface so that I'll have a base to work on. Then I roll out some clay balls roughly the size of a pea and I taper them a bit so that they're a bit ovalic on one side. Once I have enough of these tapered balls, I take my sculpting knife and I cut the tapered balls in half, and I'll use these to create faces. Once I have enough of these halves ready, I start placing them on the clay surface. Using my sculpting knife, I draw these cross lines on each of the oval halves so that I'll have markers for where to put my eyes and where the center line of the face is. This will help me keep everything more or less symmetrical. Make sure to make the horizontal line 2/3 up the face. That way you'll have enough of the face over it to create the impression of a cranium. Once I have these, I take my clay shaper and I use it to score the sides of the face just above the eye holes and below the eye holes to create the jaw shape and to create the indentations on the skull. I extend these depressions going from the head down and over the clay surface to create the impression of flames or soul fire, whatever you want to call it in your game. This will make it seem as if these souls are flowing or burning out of the surface. Once I have the general shape of the skull ready, I take my sculpting knife and I make an incision at the lower third of the skull shape to create the mouth. Once I have this incision, I'm going to take my clay shaper and I'm going to pull down the jaw to make the yawning or screaming mouth look. It's important when you do this to kind of bend and torque the shape of the mouth to make it look tortured and screaming. Otherwise, it's just a yawning skull. Nobody wants a tired skull on their tortured soul panel. While I was pulling on the clay with my clay shaper, some of the clay got a rough texture and looked a bit torn and not really flowing. To correct this, you just use some Isopropenol, which is basically alcohol, with a paintbrush and just brush off any imperfections you want to smooth out. Make sure not to overdo this so that you don't smear off all the texture you worked so hard to create. Once I have everything nice and smooth, I take this pin tool and I use it to scrape the upper edge and lower edge of the jaws to give it the impression of teeth. It's not that important. I imagine a lot of tortured souls don't have teeth. Once this is done, the last step in crafting our skull or burning souls or tortured souls is to create the eyeballs. You can skip this stage if these seem tortured enough for you, but I really like the image of the eyeballs because they give the tortured souls a much more tortured look, a much more human look. To do this, I simply roll out some tiny balls of clay that will fit the size of the eye socket, and I use my pin tool to place them inside each eye socket and the clay shaper to press them in. Once that's done, I take my pin tool and I simply indent some irises into them. That's it. When this is done, my tortured soul panel will be ready to be fitted for the model. I use this wax shaping tool to give it the shape that I want and smooth it in. And once that's done, I'll bake it and glue it on the model. Now this model isn't ready, but I think you've got the gist. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Till then, keep safe and happy gaming and happy crafting. Bye!